A bill introduced in the state legislature this week would make Colorado the 5th state in the union to have a Death with Dignity Act. If passed, the proposal would allow terminally ill patients to seek medical assistance in ending their lives. David, this issue's always been controversial, but was most recently in the news because of the woman in Oregon who chose to end her own life after in her terminally ill situation. Is Colorado ready for this law? Do you think there's enough support to actually see this become law?
I hope not. And certainly, since it does exist in other states, that's something that the committee hearings can go into and find out the experience. But when you look at the places that have had it longer, like the Netherlands, you see a really horrific slippery slope where it's not just, you know, I'm dying of cancer and it's very painful, I'm going to die in 10 weeks anyway, so I want to end my life now. In the Netherlands, they have a lot of elderly ill patients being in effect involuntarily killed, you know, without their consent, without their family's consent, and it's gone even further where they kill newborns as well in the Netherlands. And that's what, when you start saying the doctors, instead of trying to help keep the patient alive, have a role in killing the patient, not just withdrawing life support, but actually killing the patient. You can certainly see cases, as like the Oregon case you mentioned, where that you can see the argument for that, but I'd say the experience of Europe ought to make us very, very cautious about starting down that road.
Penn, anything getting through a legislature as Republicans on one side, Democrats on the other, with very thin majorities and a moderate Democratic governor is going to be very nuanced to get through. So, I mean, even very popular ideas aren't going to get through this legislative session. This is rife with issues. Does that have any chance of even getting through one of the two houses?
Yeah, I think it does, and David's concerns notwithstanding, I'm not familiar with the Netherlands, but one of the things, and we have to commend Representative Lois Court for bringing this, because I think it's a really well thought out proposal regardless of what happens to it. But the way this bill is structured, it is not physician-assisted suicide. So the patient actually has to, one of the four major conditions is you have to have a life, you know, a terminal condition. 2 doctors have to certify that you have less than, I think, 6 months to live. The patient has to be capable of administering the drug or the substance that's going to terminate the person's life, and there has to be some sort of medical verification that the patient is competent and mentally capable of rationally making the decision. The other thing that's real interesting in the legislation is actually built into the bill. There's a form that the patient has to execute, and one of them says one of them is 3 options. I've told my family, and they've consented to this. I choose not to tell my family, and this is my own decision, or I have no family, and this is a decision I'm making. So I think this is a pretty well thought out approach. It appears to ensure the terminal nature of the situation, that the patient is capable of understanding their circumstances, and there is a provision to allow family to be involved, or at least some sort of check that the patient has touched base or consciously chosen not to touch base with family. We'll see what happens, but I think it's a pretty thoughtful measure.
Susan, pro or con this, it's going to be a hot potato if it makes it all the way to Governor Hickenlooper's desk. Do you think he wants to see it make it there?
That's a great question. I really don't, given what's happened with him and the death penalty. Mm-hmm. But I agree. It's a sticky issue. I think it's a more sticky issue among Republicans than Democrats. But it's interesting because there is a split in the Republican Party over this. I mean, this is kind of one of those liberal, libertarian issues, and. One thing about Governor Hickenlooper is he cares about what the public thinks, and he cares about polls, and the polls show that Coloradans like this. And like it or not, we do have this kind of don't tread on me, you know, tradition in the state. We have pot, we have gay marriage. The former Hemlock Society, which is now called, I think, Compassion and Choices, is located here. We had a former governor, Dick Lamb, who said old people have a duty to die. And this is not a conversation that's new in this state. It's just post Jack Kevorkian. I think it has, you know, when you've got Lois Court and a bill, as Penn said, that's really pretty airtight here. You know, I think it's time for a renewed discussion.
Patty, is something this volatile make it all the way to Governor Hickenlooper?
It might. It depends on, obviously, all the other volatile issues and whether or not anything will come out of the legislature this year. But I do think it's absolutely time for Colorado to have a discussion of this. We've had discussions of this before. Certainly Dick Lamb with his "We all have a duty to die" speech back in the 80s. And when the Hemlock Society moved here, they have pushed it periodically through with compassionate choices. So I think the bill as written is really smart, really sensitive, and I think, especially as the population ages, this is an issue that people are going to want to talk about more and more and more, have some choice in this part of their life and how they end it.